Like and subscribe for endless entertainment.
In the land of Arario, the gods sealed away their powers to descend from heaven in the hopes of finding new entertainment and gifted those who worshipped them with blessings to fight against the monsters that live within the dungeon. Our story begins with the Loki Familia battling against a horde of Minotaurs while their new mage attempts to cast a spell in the open and suddenly gets targeted by one of the beasts. But luckily Ais arrives just in time to save her life, before going on to slaughter the rest of the wave without breaking a sweat. The guild descends to the 50th floor where Lefiya is feeling depressed because she cancelled the incantation when the oversized stake attacked her, as the well-endowed Tione and the flat-chested Tiana tries to convince their comrade to eat some food, though they have little luck until Ais joins them to question what's happening. The elf suddenly finds herself in a good mood, then rushes over to thank the bad bee for her help during the battle, prior to apologizing for being nothing more than a burden to their familia. However, Ais hands out some head pats to cheer up the elf girl, which ended up breaking our little Lefiya's mind. The dark-skinned queens notice that the mage really seems to admire the blonde waifu, and she admits that the swordswoman is the closest thing the gods have ever made to perfection, unlike herself, who doesn't even deserve to be on this mission. But this statement gets Tione mad since the captain personally picked the members for this expedition, as Finn arrives on the scene wondering what caused such a commotion. Tiana tries to snitch, but the love-struck woman silences the informant in the most creative way possible, which starts a fight between the itty-bitty-titty committee and the jiggly jugs. Finn announces that the dangerous part of their quest will begin soon, then calls over Ais to have a discussion while Riveria asks her fellow mage to come along too, leaving Tione to edge from seeing the captain from behind until she reaches the peak of orgasmic happiness. On the other side of the camp, Riveria inquires about what's bothering Lefiya. She explains that when fighting powerful monsters her mind freezes up, though the High Elf says this affliction will pass with experience, especially because the skills Lefiya was blessed with will one day make her be able to fight alongside Ais on equal terms. When Bet reveals that he was listening from above and tells our elf girl to give up on being an adventurer if she's too scared to be an asset to their guild before returning to the forest. Inside of the captain's tent we find Finn scolding Ais for rushing into combat instead of supporting the front line like she was told, and reminds her that they are all a part of a team, so just one person straying away from the plan could lead to their demise. But the dwarf points out that the young woman might have made the right decisions since Riveria's enchantment may have taken too long to activate, which makes the captain relent by dismissing the sword princess with a warning. At the entrance to the 51st floor, some members of the guild are thankful that safety zones exist inside the dungeons to give explorers the chance to take a break, when they suddenly see a crash of rhinos running away from a huge wave of glizzy monsters. Everyone hears the screaming in the distance and gathers to fight against this new threat, where the Caterpie uses sludge bomb on our allies. However, the flat-chested queen gives it an improv brain surgery, but the creature begins squirting its sticky fluids all over the battlefield. Tiana realizes her weapon is quickly decaying and begins freaking out about it as Bet joins the battle to give the caterpillar a free foot job to push the monster back from whence it came. The captain announces that bug types are weak to fire, so the dark-skinned queens will be the distractions while the mages completes their incantation. Riveria asks Finn's permission to make Lefiya take the lead in order to gain some experience, thus he agrees because the guild will be unable to continue the raid past this floor and it's best to take advantage of any benefits that can be gained. Our little elf girl begins the chant for a skill as the rest of the Loki Familia tries their best to avoid becoming a hashtag, but Lefiya's concentration is broken when she sees that a giant glizzy penetrated the front line. It tries to bust in her face, though luckily the dwarf comes in clutch to blow it off course before pounding it into the ground. Riveria reminds the young mage to continue casting the spell, however Lefiya finds that no matter how hard she tries, the fact that everyone around her will be sent to the Shadow Realm if even the slightest mistake is made on her part sends the woman into a downward spiral of doubt until it is impossible to maintain the ability. And when all seems lost, everyone's hope is suddenly restored as the Sword Princess of Orario arrives on the battlefield. Ais activates the wind enchantment Ariel prior to charging headfirst into combat while commanding the air to deflect anything that could do her harm so she can focus on cutting the big bad caterpillars down to size. Tiana assists by kicking down a pillar to give them a free ticket to see Bug Jesus, leaving Tione to get tentacled by the monsters, but she decides that only the captain is allowed to eat her out and begins relentlessly fisting the poor creature regardless of the knowledge that its insides will burn anything it touches, up to the point where the monster finally welcomes the mercy of demise. The mages watch the fight progress as Reveria explains that their class is meant to turn the tides of battle with one decisive blow, then begins doing an incantation for a spell to summon a tempest of flames to wipe out every enemy who seeks to harm the members of the Loki Familia. A few hours later, everyone is preparing to leave the dungeon even though Tiana still insists on going deeper. They ascend to the 17th floor where the Caramel Queens discuss the new species of monster the guild encountered, and Lefiya wonders how she can be useful to the team as Ais comes over to ask if the elf needs help with her bags. However, the walls abruptly start shattering as a herd of Minotaur comes out the holes to completely encircle them. Pizza Chest goes over to give the giant steak a foot job while Jiggly Jugs hands out a lethal neck massage. After seeing the impossible feat of the two sizes working together in harmony, the monsters had no choice but to run away in terror, though the captain orders that all of the pitiful bastards should be erased from existence. After the genocide, we find that Eisenbat has tracked the last Minotaur to the 5th level, where the Sword Princess hears a scream in the distance. Bell tries to escape from a very determined Minotaur until he finds himself at a dead end and cowers in fear as the monster is about to fist him, but luckily another adventurer is in the area to effortlessly bring an end to the mythical creature's life to save us from another isekai recap. Bell's savior goes over to check if he's alright, and at this moment our MC discovers love for the first time, before sprinting away from his crush like a true king, while Bet reveals he was watching what occurred from afar and finds it hilarious. The young man heads to the guild hall covered in the Minotaur's insides to scare the crap out of his handler, and after he cleans up, the woman scolds Bell for going to the 5th floor by himself while just being a level 1 adventurer. However, the only thing on our MC's mind is the baddie he met in the dungeon. The handler explains that Ais is a member of the Loki Familia who is a contender for the title of Best Sword Master across this kingdom, and she has also attained level 5, which puts her 4 ranks below the highest level ever recorded. Though Bell admits to already knowing this information but wanted answers about Ais' relationship status, so the handler crushes our MC's hopes by elaborating that because he is already a part of the Hestia Familia they can never be together. The depressed lad goes to cash in the magic stones gained from the dungeon, then starts heading home to his goddess, when the handler tries to cheer up Bell by revealing that women are more attracted to strong men, thus if he works really hard one day Ais might want to be with him. Bell returns to the guild house where Hestia immediately gives her only patron a warm embrace before checking to make sure he's alright. The goddess points out that she brought home some food from work today because a customer at the food cart ordered too much. Then the destitute deity enjoys the leftovers while complaining that no one wants to join their broke brigade, though Hestia doesn't mind keeping Bell all to herself. He tells the goddess that because their guild started 6 months ago, it's only natural that it will be difficult to get more members, which puts her in a very good mood as she gets ready to check how far his stats have risen. The maiden begins the ritual while attempting to persuade Bell against lusting for Ais. However, she notices that something is different this time and quickly ends the sight of grace. Hestia advises her familia to look closer to home for love as Bell observes his stats to see that the only increase was a result of him running away from monsters, but he notices a mark where a skill should be, though the deity dismisses it as being a simple mistake, so our MC walks away disappointed in himself for making little progress. The goddess muses that humans change very quickly and reveals that Bell actually got the Liaris Freese skill, which allows a person to grow in strength much faster than an average adventurer if the user maintains strong feelings towards the person whom he is currently in love with, and this makes Hestia upset because Bell got it from falling for another woman in the brief time he was away. In the capital, the Loki Familia finally makes their way to the surface. as Lefiya apologizes for being a detriment to the team while forcing Ais to save her on multiple occasions, but Tiana says that she could do some favors for the Sword Princess to show appreciation. They return to their guild house and opens the gate to find their goddess rushing to greet them, where all the women sacrifice Lefiya to the god of mischief to have her stress relievers thoroughly investigated. Loki quickly realizes that our elf girl seems to have increased in size, but following some protests the deity questions if her fun pillows have shrunk instead, which makes Tiana happy to have another member of the No Chest Club. Then their maiden announces that a party will be held to celebrate the team's safe return. Inside the bathroom, Lefiya is sneaking a peek at Ais's perfect body as she wonders what to do to repay her kindness when Tiana peeps over the stall to see that there are still only 2 members of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee in this familia. Loki comes out the pool in the mood for her favorite activity, so the other women decide it's time to leave and sacrifice our elf girl once again to get a mammogram from their goddess, though she tells Ais to visit her office soon for a checkup. In the night, the Sword Princess enters the maiden's room to get her status updated by the female version of Diddy, who wants to have a party, though after a little encouragement Loki decides not to try it. The goddess exposes the markings normally hidden on her familia's back, then copies it on a paper to reveal that because Ais has been level 5 for 3 years and has reached her peak stats, the young woman will no longer see any notable increase until she advances to level 6. The Sword Princess walks through the halls where she sees Lefiya waiting at her room door. Our little Rizlord gives Ais some high-quality crystal drops as a present for protecting her inside the dungeon, before running away like a true queen while fantasizing about the things she would like to do with Ais, and reaches the climax of happiness just from her imagination. The next day, Bell awakens to find the goddess attacking him with her juicy melons, but luckily the young king overcomes the great horny, then gets ready for another round of adventuring. Our MC walks through town when he suddenly senses someone observing him, as a maid conveniently comes by to hand over a magical stone that she claims Bell dropped, so the low IQ king thanks her for being honest prior to his stomach unleashing an earthquake. Seeing that he's starving, the seer gives Bell her box to munch on, which he immediately refuses to take until she says that our MC can return the favor by coming to visit the cafe after his raid. Inside the dungeon, we find Bell farming the monsters while wondering if there is any way to catch up to Ais, and even when faced with an overwhelming number of foes, our MC instead charges into fight, since every battle he wins will pave the way for his dream to become a reality. In the capital, Tione goes to the store to try and sell a unicorn horn on behalf of the guild, then following a few rounds of intense negotiation, Jiggly Jugs manages to scam the shop owner. At the forge, the blacksmiths are frustrated that Tiana keeps destroying their greatest creations, while Ais commissions her unbreakable blade to be sharpened, though because this job will take 5 days he lends her another people penetrator to use in its place. All our queens meet up in town, where our Rizlord gives her sugar baby a good luck charm to carry inside the dungeon, as the dark-skinned queens call them over to get ready for the celebration Loki is hosting at the tavern. A few hours later, Bell returns to the guild house and is surprised to see that his stats have dramatically increased, though Hestia is pissed because this is a result of the unique skill, which means our MC's feelings for Ais have also intensified. This realization forces the goddess to leave her confused familia in the house alone to go outside to find a private place to vent. Then the maiden wonders why Bell couldn't be satisfied with just the love she offered him over the months they were together. The young man goes to the cafe to fulfill the promise he made to Seer, where he is served an ungodly amount of food and immediately starts calculating how much it will all cost before concluding that he's going to be broke again, as the maid comes over to check on her victim, who resolves to at least enjoy his dinner. A hostess suddenly announces that the Loki Familia has arrived, so Bell begins looking at all the members who enter the fine establishment until he finally sees his crush at the back and suddenly has the urge to eat something else. The goddess treats her guild to a feast for successfully clearing a high-ranked dungeon, so everyone starts having fun in any way they can. A drunken furry brings up Ais' recent run-in with a Minotaur on the 5th floor where she had to save a poor bastard from being fisted before showering him in guts to make him cosplay as a giant tomato, which made the stranger run away screaming in terror without saying a word to his savior, but some of the teammates scolds the Wolfman because the blame lies with them for allowing some monsters to flee from the 17th floor. Bet admits that while this may be true, the rookie still tried to take on far more than he can manage, before declaring that the pathetic fool wasn't even worthy of being in Ais' presence since he's weak enough to become a hashtag from a simple strike from her blade. Bell sits in the corner listening to the intoxicated werewolf tarnishing his name in front of the maidens and runs outside the cafe while forgetting to pay the bill for the food as the two women follow behind him. However, they didn't reach RMC in time. The broken man dashes straight into the dungeon to take out his anger on any creature stupid enough to get in his way, where Bell resolves to do whatever it takes to be by the side of the woman he loves. The next day, we find Hestia at the door wondering if her familia left when she sees the beaten-up king coming from a successful raid. The warrior falls into the goddess's arms and proclaims that he seeks to be stronger, which makes Hestia decides to do all she can to help him achieve this goal. They go inside to update his status, where the maiden is shocked by Bell's rapid rate of growth, though she's still upset it occurred because of the skill and chooses not to reveal the truth since the other gods would try to take him away. Hestia tells Bell that his immense stat increase is due to a growth spurt from the innate talent he has for adventuring and begs the young man not to leave her alone. Thus Bell promises that no matter how strong he gets, this familia will always be the place to call home. Then with a smile the goddess confesses that she is going to be gone for the next 3 days. A few hours later, we find Bell apologizing for not paying his bill prior to running away, and the cafe owner thanks RMC for saving her the time it would take to beat the money out of him. Seer reveals that she prepared lunch for the young adventurer to take into the dungeon, though Bell refuses to take it until the heavenly woman activates her charm to leave him no choice in the matter. The cafe owner confides that the maid was really the one who stopped them from giving Bell a free facelift and asks RMC to stay safe on the raid, before pushing him outside the tavern so he can begin his journey inside the dungeon. At the Loki Guild house, we find that Ais is upset about what happened last night. Arario goes over and discovers that the boy who ran away was also the one she saved in the dungeon, so the Sword Princess decides to apologize to him for what happened, while the rest of the waifus come over to cheer her up. They take the Sword Princess to the fanservice clothing store, and Lefiya starts freaking out when she imagines Ais wearing the skimpy costumes, but after somehow slaying the Great Horny, the elf takes her crush to a much more respectable shop. However, our queens still can't find anything suitable for their guildmate, which makes them take Ais to all the stores they know of until one finally fits perfectly. Lefiya resolves to buy it for her sugar baby, and the other two women admit that our elf came up with this idea to make her feel better, though this seems to make Ais sad. The waifus go into the city where they encounter Hestia going off on her journey while noticing that there are a lot of gods roaming the streets today, when out of nowhere the Sword Princess apologizes to Lefiya for permitting her emotional state to make someone else feel uncomfortable. But the elf says that she did all this to help Ais in the only way she possibly could, and with some coercion from Pancake Chest the blonde babe thanks Lefiya, which brings a smile to the mage's face. In the night, the Ganesha Familia is hosting a party for all the gods in the capital. The goddess of love and beauty comes downstairs wearing a very familiar hairstyle, then goes over to the table to see Hestia stealing food from the trays. Freya wants to discuss something important, but Loki rushes over to meet with the baddest bitch in heaven, so Hestia takes this chance to question if the Sword Princess has a partner, and Loki kindly describes the wonderful things she would do to any guy who even looks at her favorite human. Mama Freya tries to de-escalate by complimenting Loki's expensive dress, though the god of mischief admits that she wore it to flex on a certain broke goddess. However, Hestia wonders why Loki left her stress relievers at home instead of bringing them along like a normal woman, which makes the leaders of the Itty Bitty Titty Committee and Jiggly Jugs restart the never-ending cycle of war until Loki walks away in shame after tanking the maximum amount of mental abuse an individual could reasonably handle. Hephaestus comes over to Freya where Hestia is quick to greet her best friend, but the divine blacksmith finds our maiden suspicious, since the last time they met she guilt-tripped her way into freeloading off the Hephaestus Familia to the point that they had to kick her out. The virgin goddess confesses that things are different as she now has a familia with Bell, and for a second Freya gives Hestia the death stare prior to saying she has to leave to run an important errand at the moment. Once they are alone, our goddess kneels to the divine blacksmith to beg a favor, and Hephaestus explains that her guild's equipment costs too much for her to afford, though Hestia stays in the good girl position for so long that the Scarlet Queen decides to hear her out. Pillow Chest admits to being a useless goddess who serves no purpose, but the person that gave the Hestia Familia a chance is hardworking with a singular goal to get stronger, and the only contribution she can think of is to give him a high-quality weapon to lessen his burden no matter how long it will take to work off the payment. Hephaestus sees that her old friend has truly changed, thus she decides to help the short queen, before taking up a hammer to make it personally since no one can find out what they're doing. The duo enters the forge to make the weapon together where the two goddesses put their all into creating a worthy item which will grow stronger with the bonded wielder. Inside the dungeon we find the duo doing a late-night raid where Ais is uncertain if the new blade can handle her full strength, while Lefiya resolves to learn Riveria's technique to move around as she chants. They walk into a room to see the Ganesha Familia preparing for the big event tomorrow when our Rizlord asks the Sword Princess to go with her, which Ais agrees to. The women tries to sneak back into the guild house, however Riveria is waiting to scold them for going on a dungeon raid when their body is not fully recovered. The commotion calls over the drunken goddess, who decides to punish Ais by forcing the young lady to be her escort to the upcoming event, despite the protest of Lefiya. Our elf spends the night crying because Loki ruined the carefully made plans she created to spend more time alone with Ais, so the mage steels herself to gain more courage to impress even the Sword Princess. The next day Bell ponders on when Hestia will come back, as a maid at the cafe calls him over to ask if he can return Seer's wallet to her because they noticed that it was accidentally left behind after she ran off to the big event to watch all the competitors face off against the mighty monsters captured from the lower floors of the dungeon. Near the Colosseum, we see that Loki has called a meeting with the Goddess of Beauty to inquire into why she's trying to steal a member from another familia, and Freya confesses to liking the young man simply because he's pretty while constantly glaring at Ais, where the deity coincidentally spots Bell running towards the event and makes up an excuse to leave the meeting early to deal with something. Under the Colosseum, everyone who looks upon Freya succumbs to her charm as the heavenly woman frees a monster to test how far the boy she's been watching can go. Our MC can't seem to find Seer, but he discovers his maiden instead, who is determined to take him on a date regardless of his quest to return his friend's wallet. The duo explores all the fun areas outside the event together until they perceive a giant ape exiting the Colosseum, who immediately starts chasing after them for no apparent reason. Ganesha gets a report that many monsters have somehow escaped their cages, so the god decides to send out an alert to all nearby familia requesting their help, even if his reputation will be tarnished, because the security of the people is the #1 priority. Bell takes his goddess into the slums in an attempt to escape their pursuer, but finds no help available as the residents has mastered the art of minding their own business. The devil monkey falls from the sky to separate Hestia from her protector before walking over to finish the job. However, Bell finds himself on the ground paralyzed by fear, though he quickly overcomes this and charges forward to protect the deity, but the body divider failed when it was needed the most. The young man flashbangs the monster to give them a chance to make a clutch escape. Bell acknowledges that he cannot face such a beast, so he resolves to lock the maiden behind a gate to buy more time for her to get away. Hestia pleads with him not to be left alone, which results in our MC explaining that he will not lose any more of his family prior to rushing off to lure the giant ape away. It's revealed that at a young age Bell's grandfather told many stories about adventurers until the old man was reportedly attacked by monsters in the mountains in such a way that not even a sign of his body remained. Following this, our MC tried to join every familia in the city, though no one wanted to take in someone with zero potential no matter how much he begged. But one day he met Hestia roaming the streets, who offered to make his dream to become an adventurer into a reality. The warrior flees as far as possible, with the ape close behind to get Bell in a position where it's impossible to retreat, and he bravely chooses to meet Jesus on his feet instead of cowering in the corner like last time. However, our MC observes that Hestia followed him into danger, a second before Harambe sniffs her out. Then he moves to save the maiden from ascending back to heaven in pieces. Bell curses the deity for coming back, thus she reminds him that he promised to never leave her alone. The monster decides to continue the lethal game of tag, so the duo retreats further into the slums and conveniently finds the perfect place to plan their next move. Jiggly Jugs is confident that if she updates Bell's stat points, the power boost could be enough to secure victory, though our MC doubts this since his weapon was broken in the fight, which makes the Virgin Goddess of the Hearth reveal that all this time she was carrying around a unique tear blade with the ability to grow stronger alongside its wielder, that she calls the Hestia knife. The devil monkey relentlessly seeks its prey in the city and notices the glow from the site of grace in the distance, then goes to delete our MC from the mortal plane. Hestia tells Bell that if he believes in his goddess, no one can defeat him, before sending the young hero out to the front lines to face the enemy head-on. The ape tries to squash the adventurer, but he runs up its arm to land a lethal blow, which drives Harambe into a rage-fueled frenzy, while Bell uses the momentum from the attack to slingshot himself back at the monster. And when it's staggered, our MC goes in close to dodge the pitiful attempts of resistance so he can introduce the Hestia knife to the giant monkey's heart to finally bring this fight to an end. Seeing that it's now safe, everyone in the slums appears to cheer on Bell for defeating such a strong opponent, including Freya, who has been observing the show in pure ecstasy from the roofs above, and Ais, who was prepared to step in if the battle was to take a wrong turn. The deity congratulates her familia on doing a great job. However, the events seems to have taken a big toll on Hestia since she drifts off into sleep mode. Inside the Colosseum, the Loki Familia notices that something unexpected is going on and exits the event to find their flat-chested goddess. They get the report about what's happening, though Loki tells them not to worry because Ais has begun a one-woman crusade to slay any stray monsters that are brave enough to enter their city. Our waifus follow behind the Sword Princess when the ground suddenly opens to reveal a giant grass glizzy, so the dark-skinned duo goes in to give it a fisting, but they can't do much without their weapons. Lefiya starts the incantation for a spell strong enough to send it to plant Jesus. However, she realizes that the monster can sense magic as a tentacle attacks from below to blow her back out. The plant decides it's time to change to a carnivore diet, while the dark-skinned queens are helpless to do anything but watch the green glizzy attempting to eat out Lefiya, and in an instant the enemy is divided by two because Ais have finally arrived on the battlefield to protect her sugar mama. More of the vegan's wet dream erupts from the ground, so the Sword Princess tries to cut them down, only to have the sword break under the strain of her immense power. Ais realizes that magic only makes the green glizzies more erect and tries to gain some distance until she sees a civilian hiding nearby and is forced to get deep-throated by the monster to save the stranger. Lefiya watches all her friends struggling to hold onto their subscription to life, where our mage decides that she can no longer be a burden who needs to be rescued constantly. The young elf gets up to begin the incantation for a spell with a newfound goal to become strong enough to stand next to the Sword Princess on equal footing while using her special power Elf Ring, which permits her to duplicate an infinite amount of elf magic with the condition that she has witnessed it. The rest of the party frees themselves from the glizzies, then goes to guard our elf girl, who is deep in a trance as she channels the first level of Riveria's attack magic to play English or Spanish with the poor bastards and bring this battle to an end. Everyone comes over to congratulate Lefiya for actually being a useful member of the Familia for once, but Loki interrupts the celebration to announce that many more monsters are lurking in the city, and commands the waifus to make them past tense before leaving to find the little one's parents. Ais apologizes for ruining the new clothes they bought prior to drinking a potion to return to fighting shape, while leaving the rest for Lefiya, who is edging herself because she views this as an indirect kiss from her sugar baby. In the night, Loki is complaining that Freya went too far just to play a stupid game with her obsession. However, the goddess of beauty is confused because she did not release the plant glizzies on the city. At the cafe, Bell sits by the door waiting for Hestia to wake up when the beautiful maid visits him to inquire about his goddess's health, since she feels guilty because it was her mistake of forgetting the wallet that put them in harm's way. However, our MC says no one is responsible for what happened. Seer reveals that many people are spreading rumors regarding how well Bell performed against Harambe, then confesses that she was also watching from a distance and really liked what she saw prior to heading back to work. The young man hears Hestia calling out his name, which makes him go inside the room where he tells the maiden all that happened. Bell wonders about the cost of the weapon created by the Hephaestus Familia, though the goddess explains that the price has already been handled, so the only thing he needs to do is become stronger, while his goddess continues to support the man she has fallen deeply in love with. In the morning, Ais has a dream about her parents wishing that their daughter will find a hero like the ones in the stories. The Sword Princess awakens in distress and goes to the blacksmith shop to get back her unbreakable blade. However, the price to replace the shattered sword is way more than she can afford. At the guild house, the Loki Familia has breakfast together, where Ais resolves to go into the dungeon again to earn some money with Tiana, who just replaced her weapon as well, but Lefiya wants to join them too for obvious reasons, while Tione chooses to stay behind so she can perv on the captain. Our flat-chested waifu gets Finn's attention to tell him their plan, then he decides to tag along, which quickly changes the predator's mindset to be very enthusiastic about the journey. A few hours later, we find Bell asking his handler for permission to go down to floor 7, though she thinks it's impossible for him to survive there until our MC shows her that all his stats have risen to E class except for agility, which is now at D. After seeing Bell's incredible progression, the handler relents to his desires and invites Bell to go out tomorrow in order to gain new equipment. The next day, our MC stands in the capital to meet up with the smoking hot handler, who he compliments for looking a lot younger in her normal attire, so she punishes Bell by pushing his head deep into her stress relievers to suffer in their squishiness. The duo begins walking through the town, where the elf announces that they will be shopping in the Tower of Babel to buy something from the Hephaestus shop. However, our hero admits that he can't afford those prices, but she drags him along anyway. Our party arrives inside the store to view all the high-quality equipment that is far outside their price range until Hestia steps outside to assist the potential customers before freaking out when she realizes that Bell is with another girl. Then the handler explains what they're doing together while insisting that there is nothing for the goddess to worry about. The duo ascends to another floor, where the half-elf reveals that the items found here are made by novice craftsmen who sell their products for cheap to get good reviews. Bell curiously looks around the level until he finds a chest plate that seems better than everything around him, though it will take all his money to afford. The handler comes over to see the young man holding the armor and encourages our MC to get it, then recommends Bell to also hire a supporter who can help with doing the trivial tasks inside the dungeon. The duo exits the Tower of Babel, where the half-elf gives Bell a present she bought to keep him safe, because being an adventurer is a very dangerous job, and any advantage in combat can make the difference between coming back alive or ending up like the countless familias who has been wiped out over the years. While walking back to the guild house, a flat-chested queen runs into our MC as a man follows close behind that immediately tries to divide Bell by two. The man questions why someone would throw their life away for someone they don't even know. However, the mate interrupts the fight to scare off the attacker with her murderous aura alone. Then Bell turns around to see that the girl he saved is suddenly gone, before thanking the cafe worker for her help. The next day, our hero tries on his new drip and bids Hestia farewell prior to going off to launch another dungeon raid. Bell thinks about getting a supporter for himself as the girl he rescued comes over to offer her services while pretending that this is the first time they have met, and of course our kind-hearted protagonist falls for it because the young woman reveals that she is a furry, unlike the hobbit he met yesterday. The two sit down to discuss the offer, where Lily reveals that she really needs the money before bringing up the fact that our MC should take responsibility for touching her special place without permission, and seeing no other choice, the young man recruits the supporter into his party. Inside the dungeon, Bell easily slaughters all the monsters to the amazement of Lily, who is very interested in the high-quality weapon he has been wielding, when Lemon Chest suddenly hands our naive MC a knife and tells him to get the magic stone out of a chimera ant while she picks up the rest off the floor. At the guild hall, the young man tells his handler that he got a supporter from the Soma Familia, though she warns him that people from that group are always desperate to make money. Bell gets ready to head home, but the elf girl notices that the Hestia knife is missing, which makes our 100 IQ MC believes he somehow dropped it during the raid. Inside the capital, we find the thieving bitch at a pawn shop trying to sell Bell's equipment, but since the people penetrator is bonded with our MC, it's useless to anyone else. So Lily storms out the building disappointed that she couldn't sell the weapon and conveniently walks past two of the maids from our favorite cafe who tells her to stop since they recognize the blade. The snake tries to deny their accusation until Ryu uses a coin to no-scope it out of the wretched creature's hand. While walking back to the guild house, the fake furry suddenly runs into our MC as the maids follow close behind her. Bell inquires if they have seen his Hestia knife, which Ryu calmly displays in front of him. This brings Bell joy far beyond human imagination as the Rizlord thanks the two women for finding the unique weapon he carelessly misplaced. The two women realizes that our MC isn't aware of what truly happened during the raid, and Ryu decides to tell him that she took it from a hobbit before leaving to return to the cafe. The next day we see the two walking inside the dungeon, where the fake furry realizes that Bell is no longer carrying the Hestia blade on his back and is storing it inside the arm guard. Our hero ponders on how the loot is to be split between them, however Lily confesses that he should decide since she only wants to do whatever makes things easier for him. After the dungeon raid, the duo has caught 2 bags to their astonishment, and Bell in his endless wisdom gives Lily half the money, which is a feat of stupidity so great that even the thief had to question the choice. Thus our MC explains that since they will be working as equal partners, from now on she should get the same pay too. Meanwhile, Freya stalks Bell from afar in a state of complete euphoria, but she gets impatient and decides to use a magic book to accelerate her obsession's potential for even more entertainment. At the guild house, Hestia is upset because Bell has been spending all his time with other women, so the Rizlord commits to taking her on a date to repay her for everything she has done. Thus the deity immediately gets into a good mood and starts preparing to make the most out of this opportunity. Hestia goes to the temple's bath to soak in body oil, where Jupiter comes over confused since our goddess hasn't been here in a long time. Our maiden explains that she has a special dinner happening later, though after hearing the shocking revelation, Jupiter summons the other goddesses to witness the unique event unfolding in front of them. They all begin requesting more details about the once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, but feeling very embarrassed, Hestia leaves the women behind. At sunset, Bell awaits his maiden, feeling increasingly embarrassed from watching the other couples around him. Our goddess arrives on the scene in the mood to mingle when the other deities reveal that they were stalking Hestia prior to drowning the young man in an endless amount of perfectly formed bosoms, to the point that Bell could no longer fight the softness. Our goddess channels the speed force to rescue the lucky bastard from death by titties, and through deploying many advanced methods of hiding to stay clear of the women in heat, eventually our duo arrives at a building that seems safe enough to rest. Hestia apologizes for ruining their night, though Bell looks out to see a breathtaking view of the city before admitting that he had a fun time today, so it would be nice to go on another date in the near future. On the other side of the town, we find the thieving bitch getting a taste of her own medicine as the older adventurers reminds her that bringing in money is the only reason someone like her could ever be in the Soma Familia, but Lily doesn't seem to mind because she almost has enough funds saved up to accomplish her goal. The next day, Bell is farming monsters in the dungeon where the Kung Fu rabbit abruptly catches him off guard, which forces the hobbit to use a magic knife to protect our protagonist. However, she silently scolds herself for revealing it. Then the young man falls to the floor from exhaustion while thanking Lily for using such a precious item to save him. A few hours later, they sit to have their lunch. The fake furry asks if she could take a day off to attend a meeting her familia is hosting, and Belle says that she can get a break whenever the need arises since they are a team. At the cafe, we find that our MC has decided to get some rest, so Cyr recommends reading a book before giving the young man a familiar-looking novel that a customer of the store apparently forgot a long time ago. He returns to the guild house, then starts reading the story, which seems to be explaining the process of how to do magic. However, Belle falls into a vision and sees many copies of himself inquiring about what power means to him. Our MC announces that he wants flames that's hot enough to burn away every one of his weaknesses with speed as quick as lightning to better chase after Ais, alongside overwhelming strength to transform him into a great hero like the fables his grandfather told. In the night, the young man awakens to find that Hestia is home from her 2 jobs, and they decide to do their routine status update, but during the ritual the goddess is surprised to find that Belle has learned a magic called Firebolt. Our MC is excited to find out what he can now do, as Hestia explains that his spell is a quick attack type, so it doesn't require any chance, though Belle has to practice using it tomorrow to know for sure. When Hestia goes to sleep, the warrior runs off to the dungeon to try out his magic for the first time, and after spamming the ability to massacre many monsters, he eventually drifts off into sleep mode with no help in sight. On the 18th floor, a man is hiding his sword in a woman's scabbard, and she asks how he was capable of securing such an expensive room, so the adventurer explains that he took on a mission on the 30th level to bring back an item. Then the scarlet-haired beauty thanks him for the information before engaging in some unwanted breath play until her lover busts through the gates of heaven. The Loki Familia arrives in the town, where Finn chooses to stay at the inn today instead of camping on the floor. However, they see a crowd in front of the building as the owner comes out to announce that there has been a murder. The party goes downstairs to witness the disfigured loot box on the floor, though there is a guard who claims to have watched the man enter with a woman hiding her face in a hood. The inn owner takes out a potion to forcefully reveal a person's status to see all the information that adventurers normally hide from each other, and they discover the fact that he was not only a member of the Ganesha Familia but a high-ranked level 4 as well, which surprises everyone since this man was slaughtered without even putting up a fight. The owner suspects one of the Loki Familia's women of committing the terrible crime, except Tiana for obvious reasons, before bravely offering to do a full-body search of them personally until Tione kindly announces that only the captain is allowed to experience the curves of her natural form. Finn notices the victim's belongings all over the place, so he assumes the woman who lured the man into the room was looking for something, but when the perpetrator couldn't locate the item, she decided to silence the poor bastard permanently. The Loki Familia gathers all the residents to announce what they found out, when the innkeeper declares that there will be an inspection of all the females, with many men offering to help out. Though Riveria clarifies only members of Loki's guild will be doing the searches, this causes all the ladies to line up in front of the prison charge. However, they are quickly persuaded to ask someone else to explore them. In the distance, Ais sees a suspicious furry running away, as the young woman desperately attempts to escape until the sword princess blocks her path. Lefiya suggests letting the captain question the stranger, but this terrifies the furry because she believes returning to the crowd will ensure the assassin makes her past tense. Under the night sky, the woman tells the story of how a creature wearing a robe hired the furry to collect the package from the adventurer, who later became a hashtag, so now she's scared to meet the same end. Ais volunteers to relieve the distressed lady of the item, and when the sword princess touches it, a sensation of untold horror immediately resonates through her body. The assassin wearing the victim's skin takes the chance to sound an alarm to signal all the plant monsters hidden in the area to launch an attack on the city. The Loki Familia uses their skills to fight off the reverse vegans, though the adventurers know it will take time to take care of these numbers, and seeing the sudden destruction around them, Ais rushes to assist in any way she can. Lefiya leads the furry to safety where Riveria's magic causes a dust cloud ahead as the women notice the assassin walking menacingly towards their group. In the blink of an eye, our elf girl begins receiving a throat massage while the other young woman gets effortlessly smacked away, and when Lefiya is close to welcoming the cold embrace of the afterlife, the Sword Princess arrives on the battlefield to save the day. Seeing no need for a disguise, the assassin takes off the face of the man she mutilated to fight more comfortably. The two swordswomen engage in a battle to display their mastery over the people penetrator, so the mage uses the opportunity to say the incantation for her undodgeable spell Arc Ray. However, the assassin blocks it with just a hand while blowing Lefiya off her feet. Ais goes in to continue the attack, but finds that she is being pushed back by the woman's powerful strikes. The elf girl tries to help her sugar baby, which catches their enemy's attention and forces the sword princess to unleash Ariel in order to push back the assassin before she can do any harm to her wallet. However, the elf recognizes the wind magic, then calls our waifu Orario, and in spite of everything, this acknowledgement troubles Ais immensely. Taking full advantage of the Sword Princess's mental state, the Pokeball jumps into the air to fuse with the nearest vessel it can find to mega-evolve the reverse vegan into a pilf with massive titties. The creature attempts to penetrate our allies, who wisely decide to retreat from the hentai monster before the recap becomes age-restricted. Ais turns around to face the mistake of nature head-on, just as the other guild members arrive on the scene to assist in bringing down the pilf, while the mages choose to do a team ultimate, when the assassin comes in to recommence the fight with our sword princess to push her into a corner, though the wind from Ariel keeps Ais safe. The blonde queen asks the enemy why she calls her by that name, but the scarlet fiend refuses to answer prior to landing a devastating blow. On the other side of the combat zone, Arario distracts the curvaceous plant monster with her incantation to give Lefiya the time to rain down hell on the abomination, though it somehow manages to survive, then tries to retreat from the ass-beating in terror. However, our flat-chested queen doesn't allow it to get away from a certain demise. The assassin strides towards a completely defeated Ais and gets ready to end the fight as the Loki Familia comes in to back up their teammate. The mages focus on healing the Sword Princess, while Finn engages in a fierce battle with the enemy to give her a full serving of equal rights. After recognizing that the captain is a level 6, the assassin resolves to fight another day, with Ais trying to catch up, but she ultimately fails to stop her from escaping. At the guild house, Loki notices that Bet is the only capable fighter left and asks him to be her personal escort for an investigation. The duo goes down to the sewers to look for the origin of the plant glizzies when they encounter a room flooded by muck, so the goddess attempts to use her feminine wilds to convince Bet to carry her. However, she doesn't have the assets to make this move effective, thus the deity from the heavens resorts to screaming like a child until he gives in to her demands. The furry catches the faint scent of people and tells Loki to walk for now. He moves further into the cavern to see a horde of plant monsters hidden in the darkness. Then Bet rushes at the reverse vegans to give them a lethal foot job, though he is compelled to use his skill Hattie to absorb all magic around him for a power boost to deliver a Diablo Jambe to the Carnivine's face to bring this fight to an end. The duo leaves the dungeon contemplating the strange stone they found, where Bet notices Dionysus watching them and confirms that it was his smell in the room below. The deities go to the cafe to hear the god confessing to being in the sewers, only to investigate the strange occurrences taking place, because a month ago 3 members of his familia were sent to the Shadow Realm, leaving this mysterious magic crystal as the only clue to their demise. They conclude that since Ganesha is too kind-hearted to plan something like this, then it must be the Uranus Familia, since they were the ones who first started monsterphilia and would have more than enough resources to accomplish the vile act. A few hours later, we find Loki walking alone inside the Uranus guild house. She meets with the god and questions him about the attack that happened during the recent event while insinuating that he is the mastermind behind it. However, Uranus denies having any involvement in the incident, which causes Loki to leave unconvinced of his innocence. The strange creature watches everything from the shadows, wondering if another player is moving around pieces on the board to fight against them, but the god decides it's best to remain hidden for now in order to bide their time. On level 37, the Loki Familia searches for the assassin and decides the woman is hiding at the moment, so any more investigation is pointless, while Ais is in a state of depression as she thinks about the day her parents left her alone to go on their final journey. Thus the dark-skinned duo tells the Sword Princess that they're heading out, but while ascending through the floors, the Loki Familia encounters a huge floor where an undead army suddenly arises from the earth. Ais rushes into the heat of combat alone to start a massacre as she resolves to get stronger to defeat the assassin. The guild members are worried about how hard their friend has been pushing herself, so Lefiya volunteers to help her sugar baby in any way possible. Hence Riveria directs our elf girl to give Ais food whenever she seems hungry, which makes our schizophrenic queen enter the dream realm to fantasize about feeding her crush. The Sword Princess solos the room easily, then the Amazon duo immediately tries their best to get the young woman to eat something, to the dismay of Lefiya. Ais senses something nearby and goes over to Finn to beg them to allow her to stay behind for a few hours. However, everyone refuses, as abandoning a guild member in the dungeon is not something they're willing to do. Riveria agrees to stay with Ais to watch over the blonde waifu, so Tiana and Lefiya decide to stay too, but the two queens are refused because there is not enough food for such a large party to remain. Finn walks away with the High Elf, where she tells him that if the Sword Princess does not work out all her frustrations soon, eventually the woman will collapse under the unseen burden that goes along with the title of the Sword Princess of Orario, and following a brief discussion he decides to leave this problem for Riveria to solve. The duo walks through the dungeon with Ais continuously apologizing to the vice captain for causing trouble, when the floor begins shaking beneath them as the floor boss spawns to strike down anyone foolish enough to trespass in its domain, though our blonde waifu steps forward to take on the challenge by herself. Rex attempts to fist the young woman and barely misses his attack, so Ais counterattacks with Sword Dance, but it does no damage against this beast. The Sword Princess activates Ariel for a stat buff that allows her to attack the boss's weak spot to disarm the monster, then goes in to finish the fight. However, the skeleton starts using spikes to keep the adventurer at a distance. The floor boss enters phase 2 and summons a sword into the combat zone, which surprises Riveria because something like this has never happened on record. Using this new item, Rex channels all its power to decimate everything in the direction of the intruder, though Ais managed to dodge a lethal blow by a hair's breadth. Still, the monster gives the young woman no time to rest as it keeps up the onslaught of attacks until our blonde waifu is backed into a corner. Riveria decides to step in, but Ais begs the High Elf to not help in this battle as she calls forth the full power of Ariel in order to keep up with the giant skeleton's abilities, while the wind acts like a fortress to stop all further damage to the Sword Princess. The vice captain observes the combat closely and recalls that overcoming a greater opponent by surpassing your own limits is the ideal condition for adventurers to further their advancement. Ais faces her own weakness during the boss's ruthless blows and resolves to push forward to unlock her full potential. The boss gets ready to strike down his victim as the Sword Princess of Arario rushes at Rex after dropping the defense aspect of Ariel to focus solely on attack, and with this newfound strength Ais shatters the giant skeleton's blade, before pressing on to use Lil Rafaga to make her enemy a head shorter while its body slowly breaks apart. Our blonde waifu walks over the defeated foe, then uses the unbreakable blade to bring an end to the hard-fought battle while feeling secure that she is the baddest bitch in this series. Riveria heals the victorious adventurer, where the High Elf asks why she has been acting like this. Ais admits that the mysterious woman used a name that only a few people in the world remember, which makes the vice captain have to remind our waifu that the Loki Familia treats all members like family, so they will always be there for her in times of need. The duo gives the item the boss dropped to the town in case the assassin returns, then continues their ascent to exit the dungeon. When they encounter Bell passed out on the floor, after a quick check Riveria concludes that he's suffering from mind down because he exhausted his mana capacity, though Ais recognizes that this is the young man who she needs to give an apology to. The High Elf gives the two some privacy as the blonde babe sits down in front of our MC and places his head on the gates of paradise, while noticing how far he's come in the short time since they met. Bell is abruptly pulled out of the depths of darkness to awaken to a sight so unbelievable that the young man mistakes Ais for his late mother. However, the waifu confirms that this is not a dream. Then our MC proceeds to do the Joestar secret technique of running away from the things he can't handle, leaving the Sword Princess confused by his actions once again. They return to the Loki Guild house, where Ais confesses to Riveria that Bell ran away before she could apologize again, which makes the High Elf begins to laugh uncontrollably at the Sword Princess's failure. The waifu returns to her room still bothered that our MC seems terrified whenever they meet and is frustrated on how to fix their misunderstanding, so she decides to visit the God of Mischief to get a status update, but finds that her maiden is already going to a meeting with Bell's handler who came to seek information about the Soma Familia. Loki admits that the guild stopped worshipping their patron god for an unknown reason, and has become a bloodthirsty organization that focuses on selling the failed versions of their alcohol to people who become addicted to the point that they're willing to do anything in order to get enough money for another sip of paradise. After handing over all the information she knows, the Diddy disciple takes Ais to a private party, where it's revealed that the Sword Princess of Orario has finally progressed to level 6, which leaves everyone in the house in complete shock at how fast the blonde baddie was able to accomplish this feat. However, in succeeding on what she sought to achieve, Ais finds that it gave her no satisfaction because she has begun to realize that there is more to life than fighting monsters. In the morning, we see that Bell is rightfully upset with himself for fumbling a baddie for the second time, though Hestia thinks this is a result of reading the book and realizes that all the pages are now blank. She explains that the Grimoire is a powerful magical item that grants the first person who reads it access to spells, but after fulfilling its purpose the book becomes completely useless. Following this revelation, Bell tries to head towards the cafe to apologize for his mistake until the maiden points out that a grimoire is worth more than a top-class weapon from the Hephaestus Familia, which makes him realize just how screwed they truly are. Then Hestia proves her infinite wisdom by choosing to get rid of the evidence before anyone discovered what happened, though our gullible MC still insists on taking the lawful good route. At the cafe, Bell tells the maids about the incident, while Cyr attempts to act like she is completely innocent, but the owner says that it's the fault of whoever was dumb enough to leave a priceless item just lying around, so our MC takes the chance to run off towards the dungeon before she can change her mind. Bell arrives to the meeting spot and notices the support being assaulted behind a bush, prior to the man who was chasing her a few days ago walking forward to block his path. He wonders if our MC has figured out what Lily has been doing to adventurers inside the dungeon, then offers him a way to get back at her. However, Bell refuses to join in on this plot, thus the man walks away disgusted by the young man's foolishness. The support comes over to her adventurer to question what the strange man said, but our MC chooses not to divulge the details of what they discussed and questions if the hobbit is okay instead, so Lily starts walking towards the dungeon while thinking that the time has come to end this relationship. It's revealed that as a child Lily was left orphaned because her parents passed away inside the dungeon, and left the little one with no other choice than to become a support, but she was constantly abused by adventurers who forced her to beg like a dog to be given enough food to survive in this cruel world. One day the hobbit resolved to escape the life laid out before her and got jobs at small businesses throughout the city ran by kind people, until the adventurers found out where the hobbit was hiding, then made sure that she had no choice but to return to them, though while Lily now appears to work like an obedient pet, secretly she has been fostering an overwhelming amount of hatred for all adventurers. At the entrance of the dungeon, the hobbit recommends for Bell to descend to the 10th floor since he can use magic now. However, RMC is worried because she had to save his life with her enchanted item during their raid on level 7, but after Lily assures him that it will be safe, our favorite dumbass decides to take the support's advice. Luckily, the Sword Princess is also making her way to the dungeon where she spots the handler surveying the Tower of Babel. She thanks Ais for saving Bell from the Minotaur, though the young lady confides that he may have been traumatized by the incident, so the handler explains that he is not actually terrified of her and is very thankful for all the help she has given him up to this point, which puts the blonde baddie's mind at ease. Then the two women conveniently overhear some members of the Soma Familia talking about robbing a white-haired adventurer, thus the handler asks Ais to save Bell from the thieving bitch that lured him into danger. The duo starts making their way towards the 10th floor, where Lily gives RMC a bigger sword because the knife he has is too short to effectively penetrate deep inside the monsters they are going to be facing. However, Bell realizes that there is nowhere to put it except for on his arm guard, so he's forced to place the Hestia knife in his pouch during this raid. They arrive at their destination inside the dungeon and an orc immediately starts heading towards them. The monster picks up a tree to use as a weapon prior to charging at RMC, but Bell avoids its attacks, then aims for the knee joints to cripple the beast, which leaves the orc wide open to be deep-stroked by the adventurer's longsword. He quickly perceives another one coming their way and uses Firebolt to give the creature an invitation to meet Orc Jesus. Bell notices that Lily is missing and sees many monster lures scattered across the battlefield, as a horde of the fugly bastard appears out of the fog of war to attack RMC while using their advantage in numbers to easily overwhelm the young warrior. And when he is in desperate need of help, a rain of crossbolts comes down to steal his pouch containing the Hestia knife, leaving Bell perplexed on why she would do this to him, though the hobbit simply walks away while wishing RMC luck on escaping with his life. The best waifu runs through the dungeon asking the other adventurers if they have seen Bell's party until she arrives at the 10th floor and sees RMC still fighting for his life. However, he is somehow managing to hold them off, which surprises the Sword Princess because he has progressed much further than would normally be possible since they last met. But during his battle against the orcs, Bell makes a fatal mistake. Thus Ais steps in to defeat the entire horde so fast that Bell can't even see who is saving him before he runs off to chase after Lily. After the genocide ends, Ais catches sight of Bell's arm guard on the floor, while the shadow monster abruptly manifests from the fog. The wannabe Sith Lord requests for her to take on a mission to investigate the 24th floor, as many strange monsters have been spotted there, which is likely connected to the red-hair assassin she fought earlier, and at the moment the Sword Princess is the only one close enough to stop whatever evil plot is happening on the lower floors. Then, seeing that she has no choice in the matter, Ais accepts the mission under the condition that he delivers a message to the Loki Familia. The thieving bitch walks through the dungeon carrying the Hestia knife and keeps it safe on her face-sitters, so she can sell it later to get sufficient money to finally pay off the leader of the Soma Guild to be free of his contract. The hobbit runs towards the upper floors when she is tripped by the strange man who promptly begins handing out some well-deserved karma to the young woman. The adventurer clarifies that 3 more men are waiting at each entrance to capture her on any route she chooses to take, then takes off her coat to get all the goodies Lily have stolen this time around. One of the 3 members arrives on the scene to see that their suspicions that the hobbit is keeping the most valuable items to herself has been proven correct, before tossing the bag on the adventurer, which contains a little chimera ant inside. The monster starts calling for the adults to help while the rest of the men walk out of the shadows holding even more little ones, and seeing that he has been betrayed, the adventurer resolves to run into the closest exit where the colony of monsters turns him into a snack. The other members of the Soma Familia kindly ask their victim for everything she has hidden, so Lily gives them the key to the deposit box that stores all her treasures. After the adventure gets what they are looking for, the leader reveals that she is going to have to act as bait to distract the monsters, and despite Lily begging for her life, he throws her into the colony while the rest of his party makes a hasty retreat. The hobbit lays on the ground alone, surrounded by monsters that slowly closes in to reunite her with her parents in Valinor. However, the young lady doesn't want to be eaten out and questions why the gods gave her a life filled with suffering if it was all going to end like this. As the ants get ready to show off their head game, a firebolt abruptly comes in to blow them off, followed by Bell, who starts a one-man crusade to reverse gangbang all the monsters around him until he is the only thing left standing in the combat zone. Our MC goes over to check if Lily is okay, but the ungrateful bitch starts cursing the adventurer for coming to the rescue even when she made it clear that the world would be a better place without her. The woman attempts to knock some sense into Bell before admitting that she always scammed him by taking 70% of the money instead of the 50% they agreed on, and sold RMC items at double the market price. However, the White Knight declares that he will always be there for her no matter what she did in the past, because Bell remembers the time when the world turned its back on him until Hestia came along to give the young man a chance to prove that he can be much more than anyone thought was possible. So the hobbit starts to unleash all the sadness that have been building up inside for years while in the warm embrace of our MC. In the morning, Lily waits by the dungeon hoping someone will hire her, when a young adventurer comes over to introduce himself for the first time and offers the support a permanent place on his party, which fills the hobbit's heart with endless joy as she resolves to do better with the second chance Bell has given her.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.
Ooh.